and I'm always naturally curious about what other people are doing. And on YouTube, there's everything you can learn. And I found this guy that talks about doing Airbnb arbitrage, which if you're not familiar with what that term is, it means you actually don't buy the property, you lease it from a homeowner, and then you put it onto Airbnb.
With permission.
With permission, of course, with full disclosure.
Yes.
That's usually the part that's missed. That's what's like.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
You were ready, Thomas.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. Guess what? Steve is in Toronto again, his favorite city in Canada. He's back. We are here this week for a conference, and that's why our guest, who I'm going to introduce in a second, is here as well. As we get the show started, I just want to remind everybody on YouTube, by the time this episode comes out, if we're not at 1,000 subscribers, Steve will cry himself to sleep.
Yeah.
Every single night. I'm pretty sure we're going to get there, but if you haven't already, please subscribe. And for everyone that's been with us since the beginning, it's so cool that we're, 5 months into this? And this channel has grown so rapidly. The audio downloads are at an all-time high. Each episode's averaging, 450 downloads on the audio side as well. So we want to thank everyone that's been listening and watching and sharing with your friends. Just thank you so much for everything. Now let's get into the show. I'm really excited. We've got our personal friend of the show, Derek Timmons is joining us. Derek, what's going on?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. So you're in Toronto from Calgary, or from Airdrie specifically.
Yep.
And you've been in real estate for 4 years now, or 5 years?
Four years full time. Well, it will be the end of April next year. Will be the end of my 4th year.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that me and Steve have been discussing a lot on these podcasts and on our own channels is every single month, it's every news headline is doom and gloom, and it's so scary, and all of Canada's dropping in price. And then these Calgary realtors are like, guys, things are okay. So what the hell? Why is Calgary and Airdrie and all the surrounding areas, why are they still moving and everyone else is freaking out?
Well, I think a big part about it is that we were in such a lull for so long. When I started in real estate, our average months of inventory for detached was 6 months. So I came into the industry thinking that that's normal, to have an incredibly large amount of supply. If all of a sudden 6 months of inventory showed up in Vancouver or Toronto, you guys would think the world has ended or something.
It's basically what's happening.
That's what's happening.
Exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So we now currently have anywhere from 1.8 to 2.2, depending on what's going on. So our inventory has just significantly reduced. And so now we feel like we're in this hot seller's market. So when you're talking to a Calgary agent, they're like, yeah, things are moving, but it's comparative to what? So, but I think the basics and the principles are always going to be the same. When you look at the average price of a detached home in Calgary, it's $470,000.
Wow. And
that's for about a 1,700 square foot home with a double car garage and a backyard. We don't have any land transfer tax. Our closing costs are next to nothing. No PST. It's just becoming more and more attractive for people to move across. But what we're seeing a lot of is investors. You and I have been talking over the last few days while I've been here about investors from Toronto buying 80 units off of a builder in Calgary. Just stock.
I can tell you too, going back the last year of craziness before the rate hike started happening, is I would get these random texts from people I didn't know in Calgary, builders. They're like, hey Tom, show this project to your clients. I'm like, I don't know, stop, reply to stop, stop texting me. I don't know you. And it started taking off. So the rate hikes haven't changed anything. You haven't seen since the rates have started going up, things haven't cooled a bit, or what's the deal?
So for us, right now in November, it's definitely slowed down. Our number of sales is slower than it was, 2-3 months ago, but it's November. So
right.
We're not seeing anything that's abnormal as far as that goes. The rate hikes definitely scared people, but Alberta being the wild, wild west, and we're the Texas of Canada, we have no rent control in Alberta.
Oh.
So whereas in Ontario and
Steve,
BC,
you should go to Alberta. Steve hates rent control.
I know he's gonna buy all the properties. But in BC, as you guys, well, obviously Steve's well aware, they can only raise the rent
1.2% this year.
2% per year.
Next year. Well, this year was 1.5.
But what's next year?
2.
Yeah, we're 2.5 in 2023.
Yeah, so we can raise it as much as we want with a 90-day notice.
And do people do that?
Well, it depends. There are genuinely good people that want their tenants to stay, and then there's other guys that just want you know, to get as much as they can. So what we saw a lot of when the market really kicked up was landlords listing their properties, selling them, homeowners took over. And then now the rental market is really tight. So all of a sudden, people went from spending $2,000 on a 3-bedroom home to $3,000, which is crazy.
On rent.
Yeah.
So your rent is up like the rest of Canada
Our rent
as well.
has gone up crazy. So now what's happening is people are going, I find in Alberta, it's always relative between the, purchase price / what you're paying for your mortgage and everything all in to rent. They're always very, very similar. So now people are like, well, screw it. If I'm going to pay $3,000 on a mortgage and $3,000 for rent, I might as well go back into the resale market. So now that things have kind of become like this interest rate has become, for lack of better words, and I hate saying this after the last 2 years we've been through, but our new normal, people are like, well, let's just buy again. So,
So interesting because the mindset's just so different here. And like, I remember when I got into the industry, I used to run the rent versus buy comparison, and buying was still a little bit more expensive on a monthly basis, but they were like comparable.
Yeah.
Now it's not even close.
Yeah.
Renting's still cheaper in Toronto. Like long term for the growth of your money, it's not the best, but in terms of just monthly payment, rent is significantly, even though we've gone up 20%. In the last year. Like when you got started, you could make the argument as well where like it just made more sense to buy on a monthly basis?
I don't know if it ever really did. I mean, you were always like a 30% down to break even if you're buying it, like always 35% down. And then for like that brief window in time when like I looked at a condo and I was like, this is going to break even at 100% financing. I was like, let's go. Let's do it. And I don't know. I think though in Calgary, you have a little bit of a different issue where for let's call it the last 10 years, it was almost like every time a tenant left, you always had to reduce the rent.
Yeah.
They went down for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And our market declined for a long, long time. So
how long can Calgary keep defying the odds for the rest of Canada? Because like literally the only agents I'm talking to, they're like, yeah, things are moving.
Yeah.
Our Calgary agents.
Yeah. I guess we'll see. I mean, we never expected to see 2021 go as crazy as it did, as anyone would have, right? But I think for the next 3 years, for sure, Alberta's going to be busy and doing well because of the migration. Like we're just so far behind you guys. And now with what COVID gave us, the blessing, there was a lot of blessings that COVID gave us, although people like to focus on the negatives. But now everyone can work virtually. Yeah. So people don't have to live in Toronto anymore. They can still work in Toronto, but live anywhere they want. Not everybody, but a large portion of the population. So people are like, let's get out of here. Let's go get more space.
Do you think that's going to continue with Elon last week being like, hey, guess what, Twitter? You're back now. You're back 100%. You think the other companies are going to start going, nah, guys.
Well, the ones that sign leases or built new buildings.
Yeah,
downtown,
we're office people again.
Probably.
Back.
And I think it's good for our mental health to have that as part of our culture. Like when you get trapped into the working from home scenario after too long, you can go a little nutty. We're fortunate that we have to leave our house to go to appointments.
You were asking me last night about that, and you were asking me about like virtual brokerages and stuff like that, and that's part of it for me.
Yeah,
that's literally part of it for me, where it's like I want to go in and see people because I don't force myself in my private life to go out and see people.
Right, me neither.
And the office is like a good. It's true, man. Like I see my kids, and we go to soccer and we do that, but like I'm not the let's go to a cocktail party or let's go to happy hour guy. Well, no. I do happy hours just at my house, right?
Solo happy hours.
It's a little depressing, and it's by myself on my couch. But
it's happy.
But there is something about the office that is.
I like the energy.
The energy. Like you're an office guy too, which is
I go
rare
in all the time, man. As much as I can, I go into the office.
Yeah, and I like
like the structure.
I mean, it's quiet, but when I bump into somebody to talk about the market or just run something by, I got a guy down the hall from me, and it's just like, hey, you want to look at this property real quick? Tell me what you think it's worth. Like there's value in that totally. I think so much of the virtual workforce is never going to get.
You know what I've noticed too is that when we have guests on the podcast, like you're here with us, so it's great. But the guests that come on virtually, it's like sometimes at the end when we're done recording, they're like, hey, that was so great to chat about real estate for an hour. Yeah, because they just haven't been doing that because they haven't been in the office.
Well, humans are a funny species. Like we need human interaction. Like one of the things that if you look at a baby, they can actually starve and die if they're not loved enough. Like if they're neglected, you can look at two babies. They've done studies where one just gets a ton of love and then they turn out to be like, healthy and normal. And one just gets the basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing. And then they turn out to be psychos. Like
crazy.
Yeah. It's wild. So we do need that. But to Steve's point, absolutely. Like, I mean, that probably could have a reverse effect on us at some point in time, but We are still seeing a lot of industries come in there, which is positive to see. So, and oil's making a return.
You had said,
So,
like, very quickly, because I think it's a normal thing you say, like the average detached house is $470,000. Not that I should have like stopped you right there.
yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's basically what a junior 1-bedroom condo costs in Toronto. That's essentially the same.
So I went out and I stayed at one of Derek's properties, and that exact property.
Yeah.
If I take that, I have very similar properties to that in my neighborhood.
Okay.
Not exactly like where I am, but really, really close. Friends have almost the exact same kind of square footages, same setup, same amount of bedrooms, everything. For sure, now the low end of that is 1.3. Like the lowest end of that is 1.3, and it's probably 1.4, 1.45.
What's that house worth?
So to give you guys some context, it's a 1,900 square foot. Now in Alberta, we don't count our basement footage in that. So there's probably 500 feet in the basement. So call it.
There's more than 500 feet in the basement. I didn't see the basement.
Yeah, let's call it 6. So we're 2,500 square foot house. So 3 bedrooms up, a fully finished suite in the basement, walkout backs onto a pond, double car attached garage. We bought it for $650.
Crazy.
Yeah.
No, okay.
So about half.
Well, when I was in that neighborhood, though, they must have been like unfinished basements and stuff. But there was properties like $499. I'm sure they were going over ask or whatever. But
that one was higher because of the location, the size of the lot.
Yeah, it's right on. It's right on a lake. Like it's like it's
it
as
was
good as they get, right?
Yeah.
But it's like that's a 2-bedroom condo in my market, like
That's
800
crazy.
square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath.
I mean, that's a 1+ den condo in downtown Toronto. 650.
And then you end up in a spot in Airdrie where it's like, okay, now I've got that space, but I can also put in a rental in the basement, finish the basement. And I just don't understand why everybody's not just moving there. And I guess everybody is moving there.
Well,
who's moving there?
A lot of people I know.
That's a great question. We had 40% increase in migration to Alberta last year. Now I can't tell you what the numbers are per year of how many people normally come, but all I know is that it increased by 40% in the last 12 months.
Wow.
The first 17 deals, 17 of the first 20 deals that I did in 2022 were from BC or Ontario.
Really?
Yeah. It got to the point where I had to hire a buyer's agent because of inbound. It got actually so crazy that we did things like created a relocation guide for Calgary. We created a 35-page document. I kind of just like I copy you guys on everything I do. I was like, what would Tom do in this situation? I was like, create some really cool documents. So we created a relocation guide with like literally everything you need to know about Calgary, like, you know, Calgary and area, because we had so many people being like, well, I don't know the city. I don't know what to do. I don't know. Like,
And they were moving there because of job opportunities, because they could just buy a house at half the price from where they're coming from. Like, what's the
overwhelming response that I got from everyone was, I'm going to sell my house in Vancouver. I'm going to take the cash and buy something in Alberta and be mortgage free.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Lendlord. If you've not heard of Lendlord, it is a software platform designed for real estate investors. It helps you easily track your portfolio and get reminders when things like rent and utility payments are due. But the best feature and my most favorite feature of the entire platform is something called a deal analyzer. This is where you, as a real estate investor, can log into the software, plug in your future potential purchase, and the system quickly comes up with important information like cap rate, cash on cash return, and even future potential values. It's a totally free software, but listeners of the Tom Storey Show can get 90 days of the upgraded paid version right now totally for free by either clicking the link down below in the description or going to lendlord.io/TomShow. And if you're a real estate agent and you're not using this software to quickly and efficiently analyze deals for your clients, well, I think you're doing your clients a disservice. Download Lendlord today for a quick and easy way for you to analyze not only your own future purchases, but those of your clients. So again, that's lendlord.io/TomShow to sign up right now, and listeners of the Tom Storey Show receive 90 days of the paid version totally for free. I have tried this software myself. I think it's fantastic and extremely useful as a real estate investor. Sign up today. That's lendlord.io/TomShow. And now back to the podcast. And maybe even buy a second property where that's then my income.
I got a realtor
Legitimately.
referral from Langley or Surrey or somewhere. I can't remember where the guy was from. I don't really know him very well, but his clients bought this townhouse and then 16 months later sold it and made $360,000
in Langley.
Yeah.
So this was during like what, bought in early 2020, sold in 21,
something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. They made $360,000. So you take the equity that they put in to buy it, plus, and they literally bought a detached house and don't have a mortgage on it now. And so now they're like feeling like they're living like kings.
I mean, they hit the jackpot on timing.
Was amazing.
lucky, but yeah,
for sure.
And now they spend the rest of their money on winter jackets.
Yeah, and snow tires. And windshields.
I saw a lot of posts recently because it snowed pretty hard in Calgary.
Oh, it was nuts.
And it was all like all the people from Toronto and BC walking outside of their new homes in Calgary, being like,
what?
"Wait a second,
What did we do?
We didn't know this."
Did any of them shut off their outside hose bibs?
I hope so. I sent them all an email. Reminder. That was one of my best database emails, actually. I got the most, but I put in the subject line, "Your pipes are bursting." So people are like, what the hell? And then there's a video of me telling them like, hey, please turn off your taps because in the spring, if they burst, you're going to call me to fix your drywall. And I don't want to do that. So this is what you do. That was our highest open rate all year.
Crazy.
But
and the other thing you had said to me is that you have to plug in your car to start it there. Like not electric cars, regular cars.
Yeah. So you do need to get used to, I mean, anytime it's below -20, you're going to want to plug in your car and keep your...
Anytime, Tom. It's below -20.
Yeah.
It doesn't get -20 here that often.
It never gets -20. The coldest it's ever been I've ever experienced in Vancouver one day when I was in grade 3. Because in grade 3 we had to like check the
1942.
part of our it was 87, but thanks. Sometime around there. But like we used to go sit down and do circle time, and our teacher would make us check the temperature every morning. One morning it was -13, and that was it.
Yeah,
like we're pretty much like below zero is rare for us.
The last truck that I bought when I lived on the island, and it didn't have a block heater cord. And when I moved back to Alberta, I went to look for it because I had never used it, and I was like, where is this thing? And they're like, I'm like, oh, I bought it on the island.
Apparently my truck has a block heater.
Yeah, but you just don't know what it's for.
I have no idea where the plug
I don't even know what that is.
So your engine has a little heater,
okay,
and then you plug it in, and it keeps it warm so it doesn't freeze at night. Because if your block freezes, your car won't start, or it'll crack the block, and your engine's toast.
You want to know a real old-timey story?
Yeah,
Before they had those, guys that lived in Alberta would have to start little oil fires underneath their cars to keep the super safe. Block heater, better option.
So it's funny because it's so cold that the extension cord that you run to your car becomes like one solid thing. It's like hard as a rock, but it keeps your engine warm. So you got to bring when it's finally warmed up, you bring the cord inside for an hour so that it'll melt so that you can roll it up.
So this is like we had the example on a smaller scale of, okay, the pandemic starts, work from home is a thing. Outer markets outside of Toronto and Vancouver take off. Yeah. And all the money's coming from the cities for the most part. And then now some people, like, we're seeing articles in like our local stuff like Blog TO and whatever saying like, we bought a house in Prince Edward County and now we're moving back to the city.
Yeah.
Because they have to go back to work and it's not what they thought it was going to be and all this kind of stuff. Because people were just kind of making decisions based on emotion and fear, basically.
And the immediate need.
And not a ton of logic, just like emotion and fear.
100%.
So do you think on a grander scale that someone that moved from Vancouver, Victoria, Toronto, Mississauga, whatever, to Calgary on the virtual stuff in a year from now might go like, actually, I didn't know what exactly I was doing here. I got to go back to work over here. Like, is that going to happen?
A week ago, I would have had a different answer for you because I had a way different opinion about Toronto, but I've been fortunate to spend this last 3 days with you, and I have a very different opinion of Toronto now. Personally, for me, I think the city is great. Like, I've actually kind of fallen in love with it. Would I want to live here? No, but that's my lifestyle. Like I like big open spaces and fields, and I have the mountains right there. But I could picture someone who's used to the culture of, like, I have walked more places in the last 3 days than I have in the last 5 years. Not even kidding. Like, it's like the only time I walk anywhere is if I'm at the mall. And
as long as you don't want to be in a car, Toronto, like downtown Toronto, is fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you want to get on a highway, like my story of coming in with the Uber last night, like honestly, it was like your Uber is going to be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, airport to here.
Yeah.
At an hour and 15, I was like texting Tom, dude, should I just get out and walk?
Yeah.
Like this guy, I mean, the Uber driver was a piece of work anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way because my experience with when I used to work for another company, I come to Toronto, they put me at like Steeles and
like not downtown Toronto.
Yeah. It was as North Toronto as it gets, right? And it was just like cars and I don't know, strip malls and that sort of feeling, right? And it's such a different feeling down here. Totally. And I think Calgary's obviously a lot different than that, but it is what I found strange about when I went through Calgary, and it had been so long since I've gone through Calgary, is it's just like, wow, there is so much opportunity to expand in whatever direction you want.
Yeah,
there.
it's wide open.
So I don't know how bad is urban sprawl and traffic gonna get bad.
We our like traffic jam is like sitting on the highway for 15 minutes bumper to bumper. Like the worst I've ever had it. If there's a really bad accident, I'll sit there for maybe 40 minutes, and that's like the worst of the worst. Could that get way worse as the population increases? I'm sure it could. But to get back to your question, I think, someone that loves the mountains and the ocean, whether they come to Alberta for a few years to test out, like, humans are always going to want to go where their heart and their soul feels good. As corny as it sounds, like, money is always going to be an initial decider or decision maker, but then eventually they're going to go back to what feels good for them. And some people just like love the big city or love being near the ocean or don't want the snow. Even though we see the sun every day, people are like, I'd rather have rain and no snow than snow, you know what I mean? Or minus 30 or whatever the deal is. So I don't know, but I think what I've learned from both of you guys over the last few years, or overwhelmingly more than anything, is you guys, and I'll commend you both on this, is you're fantastic at studying the numbers of the past and looking at what the data was moving forward. So, and if we look at, the population of Saskatchewan has been 1 million people for the last 40 years. It's always this many leave, this many come. It's never grown, it's never shrunk. So that tells us something. Same with Alberta. It's been around 4 million people I think we're at 4.5 million people now, but we've been there for the last 15 years. So yeah, it had a huge bump up, but maybe that'll settle out. Who knows?
I'd be curious of what, before coming to like real Toronto and experiencing it and walking around and seeing downtown, what was the opinion?
That this is a concrete shithole.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very busy and people are rude.
And you get that opinion based on talking to other people from where you grew up, right?
When we were with your I'll call her wife and baby, and you left her, and we went from one spot a block away to another to get a coffee, my heart was racing. I was like,
because you thought it wasn't safe.
You can't leave your wife and baby alone. And maybe that's my ignorant attitude, being like a small town Alberta boy.
No, that's
but I'm
Vancouver.
You know what I mean? I'm like, are they safe? Are they good? And she was like, it was no big deal. Like, you guys looked at me kind of like I was crazy. But I find that funny, because in my mind it should be the opposite. You guys should be the ones overprotective. Like, do you have your pocket knife and your bear spray with you? Like, you know what I mean? But you're not at all. And so I found that to be really interesting, because I just wouldn't do that.
You know what it is? It's when you have a massive amount of people, you stop noticing the people.
Touche.
It's totally what it is.
Gave me goosebumps when you said that.
So for instance, if you're in a small town, and there's a dude laying on the pavement, and they're obviously not doing well,
for real,
everybody's like, dude, are you okay?
Yeah.
And when you come in Toronto, you're like, there's a dude on the pavement, keep walking.
That's what I texted to Tom.
Literally, he saw that 2 days ago.
I was telling him, and for context for the people listening, I went to the gym first day I was here and took an Uber there, and then there was a guy sleeping on the pavement outside of the Good Life. And so I sent Tom a text, and I'm like, he's alive, I checked. And Tom's like, thanks for checking. But I just was like, looking at him, I'm like,
Tom's like, don't touch those people.
I didn't touch him, but I just kind of looked at him, and I'm like,
not what I would say, by the way.
He's breathing. He's breathing. He started moving. I'm like, and it was like huge culture shock. But that's a good point, because like, if I saw that in Airdrie with 70,000 people, I'd be like, ambulance, 911, like something's wrong with this guy.
Totally. And where like our experiences now are like, there's probably so much drug addiction and mental health problems that like I don't want anything to do with what could arise from me interacting with that person.
Fair enough.
That's what, like, for instance, I was thinking about, I took my daughter to the hockey game in Vancouver the other day, and I was like, you know what? I took her on the train once to a Lions game when she was like 3.
Right.
She loved it, right? Looking out the window, all this stuff. The train in Vancouver 5 years later is not the same thing anymore.
You're giving me goosebumps.
And so now I think it's just cold in here. But
the window's open.
It's just not the same thing anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put her in a situation where, somebody comes by and starts begging and different things, because if somebody does want to have a confrontation and they're becoming more and more and more common, like, I can't be putting an 8-year-old girl in that situation.
No.
So I was like, screw it, we're driving down.
Or yourself, you don't know what that person's got, a weapon or whatever.
So that's why, like, when you see someone in distress, I think in cities you just start it starts becoming numb.
It's like the sad reality that you just like, oh, you just see that. That's just a thing.
Fair.
Yeah.
And you guys definitely don't have it.
Well, I mean, we do, but we have it clustered into such a small area. Like there was one time where me and a couple buddies, the owner of the brokerage that I work for and the owner of the law firm that we use and a bunch of us, we went and got like 100 McDoubles or something and took it down to the drop-in center. And like, you should have seen their reaction. They were like going nuts over just a cheeseburger, right? Yeah. Like, and they were thankful, but it was just like scavengers, man. Like they just flew in like a bunch of, whatever. And
it is life changing or mind altering anyway, because we do with my team through Chris in the past, our kind of charity of choice was always the food bank. And the food bank, I was always kind of one of those people that I was like never really involved in any sort of charitable stuff. And then as soon as I went down to the food bank and I saw who needs it, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't lazy people that just don't want to go to work. Right.
They're
This is
sick.
people that they're either sick or they need, or they're already working jobs and, they just can't piece it together.
Yeah. Right? It makes you feel blessed to have what we have for sure.
I wanted to change subjects here just slightly. So one thing now you're going to be very like nonchalant about this, but like your acceleration in your real estate career has been very fast. I know for a fact this year your team sold over 100 properties, which in your 4th year in real estate to do that is just ridiculous. Like it's so you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
But you have only been a real estate agent for 4 years. So before that, you were in like, give me the story of like the construction world. You were in the construction world. You were half 1 foot into the door of real estate, and then you went all in. Like what got you here so fast? Because your story is not normal, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you. I became a realtor by accident. That's what I've deduced after these last few years. It was a mistake.
Is that what most people think?
Yeah, fair. Like it was.
I'm like the only one that like decided when I was 18 I was going to become.
He had high hopes of being a real estate agent one day, painting the city with his picture. No, I totally got into I became a realtor by accident. So I grew up in a sort of unique situation that like my dad's side of the family was all blue collar contractors, iron workers, and then my mom's side was actually realtors. So my mom was a realtor. My grandpa was a OG realtor. Yeah, my grandpa passed away when he was 85 of a massive heart attack, and when he passed away, he had a 40-unit condo building pending at the time. Like he literally sold real estate until the day he died. But I remember growing up, my grandpa would be coming back from open houses, or we'd be going to the Royal LePage, like barbecues or whatever, and he'd have a boat. Or he'd come home from a day of work and he'd have a boat, or he'd have, a stereo system. And we're like, Grandpa, what's going on? He's like, they couldn't pay their commission. So I got a boat. We negotiated a deal. Like things were different. So, but when I was growing up, I never thought about that side of life, but I always saw myself going into the construction side and being more of a builder and a contractor and things like that. And I went down that path for a long time, for 15 years, and I had a crew and I ran that crew, and it seemed like no matter what I did, I got the same results. And I sort of coined this term called a fool's insanity, where everyone knows the definition of insanity, where you do the same thing over and over and you expect different results. Right. But a fool's insanity is when you know exactly what the results are going to be, and you're like, you just do it anyway. Right. Like I knew on January 1st every year I was going to top out at 85,000. That would be a good year. But I always had this crazy idea that, well, maybe if I hire more guys, or if I only do luxury homes, or if I do this stuff, I'll make more, or I'll have more freedom. And then in 2016, it wasn't an abnormal thing that happened, but one of my guys just didn't show up for work, which happened all the time. But on this one day I snapped. I'm like, okay, whatever. I got to do something different. So I decided to get my real estate license so that I could flip homes. That was the only reason. I just wanted the inside track. I wanted to be able to have access to the MLS and then get to know the realtors and things like that. So I got licensed November 1st of 2017. It took me a long time to get my license because I didn't really care. And then I wasn't making any money or selling any houses or anything. But now that I had this license and I started meeting realtors, and I was meeting people that made like $200,000 a year, and I didn't think that was ever possible for me, now it suddenly became possible, because I'm like, well, this guy is like, I don't even know if he can speak English. Like some of these people can't, I don't even know if they can read. Like they seem illiterate and they're making this kind of money.
Everyone in the comments is like, yes, thank you for saying that. Realtors already.
Yeah. And then I actually wanted to give it an effort, but everything I was doing was failing. I tried like 15 open houses. This actually is a hilarious story. I don't know if I've ever told anyone in our community this story, but I did like 15 open houses and I got no results, no contacts, nothing. And then my mom, who lived with me and I supported, was like, let me come with you to an open house and I'll show you how to do it. And I was like, yeah, whatever, right? And she got 3 contacts that day in a row. Bang, bang,
What did
bang.
she do that was different from what you were doing?
She was just so chill. She just started asking them questions. Hey, how are you? What are you up to today? How's your day? Why are you guys here? What can we help you with? Where do you live now? Asking question after question after question. She didn't follow them around like a psycho. And then finally she was just like, well, you know, if you guys want, what we can do is email you some properties that you might be interested in, or we can put together an evaluation on your property. And like, she hadn't been in real estate for like 20 years, but it came out of her so natural. And then I looked at her after the first one. I'm like, how did you do that? She's like, I've done this so many times. Yeah. And so anyways, then I finally heard Richard Robbins speak, and then I came to life. But then the truth is, as corny as this is, I found you. Like Richard talked about you. So I became like, I just started copying you. I was like, well, and not like word for word what you say on all your videos, but I was like,
try that.
Yeah, I heard it works really well. But once I signed up for coaching, I just did what I was told, and I was told to build a database, communicate with those people regularly, show value. But I literally and it wasn't just you. There was other members, Steve too. Like I took a lot of advice. If someone's willing to give me 10 minutes on the phone and give me advice, I'm going to take that advice and do something about it. And if it doesn't work for me, or if it doesn't land for me and it doesn't feel authentic, then I probably won't continue with it. Yeah. But a lot of the stuff that you were doing was like, your Bomb Bomb videos. I went so bananas with Bomb Bomb in my first 6 months of having it that they called me and was like, hey, what are you doing? And they started sending me free shit. And I was like, cool.
Oh, because you were sending so many videos.
They weren't like, can you stop using up all our server?
Yeah. And so anyways, that's really my story. I just did the basics. Like people want to complicate this business and make it to be this super complex thing, but it's not. It's really, really not. Like your line about like it's relationships over transactions it hits the nail on the head every time, because like if you just treat people how they want to be treated, be there for them, provide value, and just show them that you care more about them than you do about the paycheck you're going to get, they absolutely go nuts for you and they tell all their friends. So this is actually the first year that my number one source of business has been from my database. So repeat and referral is number one for me this year. And that's the first time that's happened. And I expect that to grow year after year. But I've had other avenues like we've talked about that have supported that and accelerated that. But I put a lot of attention onto growing my database. And my main focus for my first year was 2 contacts a day into my database 5 days a week.
So you took a big idea and then you short formed it into like, okay, that means this many contacts per week, per month, and then you just broke it down to a daily task. And I think that's it, right? Like on the building a business side of things, whether it be real estate or anything else, it's like the formula is there somewhere. Yeah. So somebody else doing the same thing as you is doing better than you.
And it's usually a lot simpler than you think.
It's usually way simpler than what you're trying to do. And you're like, oh, okay. And then the people that are actually successful in it are willing to share with you what they do. And that's the thing too. Like I've learned so much from other people that have been doing it way longer than me. And that's on the business side. Now on the just like going into the new year side. So I still have this all the time. Like, my team sold over 100 homes a year for the last 3 years. And we've been growing every single year. And we've taken over a lot of market share in our little community. But I still like get to January 1st and I'm like, maybe I never sell a home again.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Steve, do you have that same thing that happens to you?
Yeah.
The reset.
Like
absolutely.
Does it ever go away?
Never.
Does the imposter see, even sometimes like, with this podcast where we have guests on, or like I'm speaking in front of a crowd of 800 people and I'm like, I'm doing it. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I the one doing
It's imposter syndrome for sure. And like where you don't feel like you're supposed to necessarily be there. But like, hey, we're there right now. We're kind of getting into the doldrums of the winter market, right? Where there's not going to be a lot going on for a while.
What's that word you just used?
Doldrums.
That's a new one for the podcast.
For you?
Yeah, for me too.
So I don't know
Use
what
it
it
in a
means.
sense,
I think it means like dark and gloomy, but
the ominous winter market.
But it feels like you're going to do nothing again. And right now, let's face it, I'm pretty much setting up for next year.
Yeah.
right? Like there's not going to be a lot of November and December deals this year in particular. So you're setting up for next year, and then you're like, oh, what am I really doing?
But I've found that now to be a blessing. I used to be afraid of that, but now I embrace it because I'm like, what are we going to do during this downtime? I'm not going to sit around and be whining about how I don't have many deals. I'm going to think about the spring and what I'm going to do to amplify 6 months away. Like you were talking about last night at the hockey game, like if I can get that channel to pump up to 10,000 viewers or 10,000 subscribers, and then the next cycle comes, now I'm hitting, because people always want to start working after it starts, but you want to be in full swing.
It's like if you're a geo farmer, right? You want to double down in the down market when you're geo farming. You don't want to scale back. Every single spring, though, we usually get a flurry at the beginning of the year because I still think the best time to be on the market is that first week of January. Every single year, but we always get that first flurry, and then we do nothing from January 15 to February 15. There's almost no business.
And then they all flood on after.
And then they all flood on afterwards, right? So that's the worst part of the year for me, where I feel like, oh no, did I screw up this year? And then you get like 60% of your transactions in the next 60 days, and you're like, oh. Have
you heard that quote from Jim Rohn where he's like, it's all about perspective when you talk about things like door knocking. When it's cold and rainy, is that, that's the best time to go because everybody's home, even the other salesmen. You know what I mean? Because no one's working.
No one's going out.
Like when everyone's sitting at home, like when COVID hit, everyone was freaking out. They were binge watching Tiger King or whatever. I literally spent 8 hours a day on the phone from 9 to 5 every day, and all I did was call people. I was burning my phone out 2 or 3 times a day, and I spent 3 months doing that. And then I had the biggest year at the time ever. But really,
because you connected with other human beings in an authentic way, and you did what you said you were going to do. Like that's what all the time. It's like it is truly simple.
It's so simple.
You do what you say you're going to do. You know your stuff. You're a good person. You're there for people. You don't show up with commission breath. You show them what they need to know. Here's all the things I would want to know if I was in your position, and then your business grows. It's like not a.
I watched,
but here's the thing: it takes time.
Yeah, I watched a really interesting podcast with Ed Milet recently. I was telling you about this, and how do you say his last name? Tom Ballou.
I know you're talking about Tom. Yeah,
he's awesome. But anyways, Ed Milet said, if you study the most successful people, they generally have 3 characteristics in common. Number 1, they have an inflated sense of self, which they think they can do anything. So if they set a huge goal, they're like, I'm totally going to crush that goal. Conversely to that, their second characteristic is that they don't think they're good enough. So I remember last year we did 91 deals, and I'm like, oh, it should have been 120. And then my coach was like, well, dude, like, why don't you just be excited about the fact you did 91? But I never think I'm good enough. I have that insecurity that like, I'm not good enough, so I'm just going to keep pushing. So number 1, they have an inflated sense of self. They think they can do anything. Number 2, they don't think they're good enough. And number 3, they have incredible impulse control, which I've seen from you guys this weekend too. Like,
I've got a solid 2 of those.
But they will delay gratification, and they're okay to sit and do the boring, monotonous, repetitious work. And that's really all it is. It's like building a business in real estate is being willing to go through the boring shit for 2 to 3 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the Real Estate Video Course. Today's real estate industry has changed, and you can no longer rely primarily on door knocking, cold calling, and geo farming. While these strategies still work, video provides something that these traditional methods just don't, and that is leads that reach out to you because of you and the message and content that you are providing. I believe that video is king, and that through video, you can leverage your message, create stronger relationships, and become the authority on real estate in your marketplace. The Real Estate Video Course is a 5-part course that will teach you the fundamentals of video, including why it's so impactful, the equipment that you need to invest in to get started, and the proven tips and strategies used to ensure long-term success. So go to videocourselogin.com today to become a true creator, level up your editing and production skills, and develop your real estate video plan to leverage your message to current and prospective clients. That's videocourselogin.com. The link is below in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code TOMSHOW at checkout for 10% off any purchase. That's videocourselogin.com and use the checkout code TOMSHOW. That's TOMSHOW.
You know, what I want to get into with you is Airbnb.
Okay.
Now, I've seen through the dark hole of Twitter and all the other things, everyone's saying Airbnb shutting down. Everyone's going back to hotels. Hotels are better. Airbnbs are crap. And then I talked to Derek, who's running 3 Airbnbs right now and making an absolute killing and crushing it. And I'm thinking, well, is this just another weird thing that Calgary is an anomaly? Or
well, let me give you a little bit of my experience because I used your Airbnb. The big thing that
it's gone down in value since.
It was a lot smellier after he left.
I told him never mind. I don't tell you what I told him. I don't want to ruin his future stays.
That's funny.
The thing is for me, like obviously kids.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't going to a hotel room, especially if I'm going to be like somewhere for 4 or 5 days. I don't want the 2 queens thing. I don't want 2 separate rooms because that's even stupid more expensive.
No kitchen.
Like it's perfect for what we're doing. We're doing one for our team building. Like we're doing an Airbnb, like 12 sleepings, like 6-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's such a good opportunity. I don't know that it will ever replace hotel, like business people hotel.
Right.
But anyway, I'm loving where I stayed.
So here's my question, right? Like I'm asking this as a business, not the state of Airbnb, but what you've created with your platforms, with the properties that you have, and you've inspired me. Now in Toronto, there's very strict Airbnb rules. You can't really do any of this, but I'm talking here most markets that you can.
Yeah.
No fun Toronto, right? But like for my cottage, I've been around to get to friends and family, but like I should be really looking into this because the money you can make is insane. So first of all, how did you learn all this? How did you incorporate this in? And then like what for the listener that is thinking about building an Airbnb type of business, how can they do it?
So I'm a student like you guys, and I'm always naturally curious about what other people are doing. And on YouTube, there's everything you can learn. And I found this guy that talks about doing Airbnb arbitrage, which if you're not familiar with what that term is, it means you actually don't buy the property, you lease it from a homeowner, and then you put it onto Airbnb.
With permission.
With permission, of course, with full disclosure.
Yeah.
That's usually the part that's missed. So slightly.
Yeah. So of the 3 listings that we have, 2 of them are in the house that Steve stayed in that we own. And after we bought that house and put it onto Airbnb and saw the numbers and the way they were, we were like, let's try this arbitrage thing. So the 3rd one that we got is actually an arbitrage. We didn't buy it. We approached the owners. We told them what we wanted to do. We were fully upfront with them. We treated it the same way we treat real estate. We were like, what do you guys want? Like, what are you doing? They're going to Dominican for a year. They want to rent their house fully furnished. Yeah. They want someone to take care of it. They wanted to, know that it was going to be okay. And so we
didn't even have to buy the furniture.
We didn't have to buy anything.
Wow.
So I invested $4,500 into this property, and in my first month, I made $1,800. So, and the $4,500 that I had to invest, actually half of, like $2,300 of that was my damage deposit. So technically, I didn't even invest $4,500.
Right.
Because if nothing goes wrong, we'll get that back. But we had to buy sheets and linens and all that sort of stuff. But so the model for Airbnb is really exciting because, like Steve said, you can get a whole house with your kids that has a backyard. You can bring your dog in some situations. You have a driveway to park on. You have a kitchen to cook in. You have a fridge.
Perfect.
Yeah. And there's TVs. There's all these things, and you're not cramped in. And like, I mean, that house we're charging like $200 a night. In the high times, we might charge, the summer we might charge $250, $275. But it sleeps 8 people. So if
you charge me $400 a night?
Well, you're a special.
Well, it's the Steve fee.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry.
But when you have 6 people sleeping in a house, even if they're paying $600 a night, they're only paying $100 a person. And they're getting access to all this stuff. Yep. We treat it like a hotel. So we leave a bottle of wine and a handwritten note for every person. You might not have gotten the handwritten note because we hadn't started that at that point. But all I did was I got a pad made at Vistaprint where I wrote one note.
Hey, Steve, please don't ruin anything.
But we treat them well. We want to give them a 5-star experience.
Yeah.
But the platform is actually growing in numbers massively. So there was 140 million stays on Airbnb last year. Wow. But that's worldwide, right? So as it grows and grows, there's probably going to be an issue where more and more of these houses are turning into Airbnbs where people want, they need housing long term. But
so just before we get into some of the specifics of doing this, so I think of this again, like I'm born and raised in Toronto, and I think, Airbnb, if someone's going to rent an Airbnb, it has to be near a hotel because they were going to go to the hotel maybe anyways. Yeah. They're only going to stay in a condo downtown Toronto that's close to all the things. Like me not knowing anything about Airdrie, which is 10 minutes outside Calgary.
10 minutes north.
So who's staying? Like, who is there things happening around there that they're going to then stay there? Like, why are they staying in? Man, maybe that's a dumb question, but like, who's renting it?
You wouldn't even believe it. Like, we get all sorts of stuff. Like one of the families that's staying in one of the units right now, it came for a funeral. and they're close to their family. Another, we got a 3-week booking next June, May and June, for a family that lives in the southern states who's coming to visit their best friend, who they've never been to Canada, but I don't know if their friend moved here or whatever, and their friend lives a block away. So they're like, this is perfect for us, right? Other families are coming for weddings, or a lot of people want to go to Canmore, but they don't want to spend $600 a night for Canmore. They'll make the hour drive.
Okay.
Also too, I mean, we're 20 minutes from the airport, so we don't know when, why, how, but all we know is that we use the power of the internet and SEO to keep us on the top of the pages, and then
so I wanted to ask you a few, like, if anyone's thinking of getting in, I'm not going to ask you to give away all your secrets, but
I'll give them all away.
Okay, the 3 that you kind of brought up to me was like, 1, in the times where you have a Monday to Wednesday open and the rest of it's booked, if you'd rather not have it empty, you go in and you do like a special sale just for those days at a completely discounted rate just to get it filled, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so it's not a passive investment thing. You got to go in there and be a part of it and do that weekly. It's kind of like setting your like fantasy football lineups. Like if you miss it, you guys are on the bench and whatever. Totally. You got to go in every week and make sure you're getting it filled. So that would be number 1, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
You do have to work at it. If you're expecting it to be passive, don't do it.
Yep.
Yeah. It is. You got to hire people. You have to make sure the cleaners are showing up when they're supposed to show up, that the locks are working. Now there's automations that you can set up.
That's what I was going to ask. So tell me about the locks.
So you want to automate as much as you can. So Airbnb has a really, really cool platform, and so does VRBO, where you can automate the welcome messages, the checkout messages, the garbage day messages, things like that. But you don't want to deal with any keys. So we use Yale locks. There's a variety of smart locks you can use. The reason we like Yale is we can have as many locks on one app as we want, and we can add 250 users per lock.
Crazy.
So I can have a code for the cleaners, for the maintenance guy, and then they integrate with Airbnb. So if you book at that property, it automatically generates a code for you, sends you on Airbnb, hey, a message that we create. Hey, Tom, thanks for booking with us. We know you had a lot of choices, and we're thankful that you picked us. Here's your code for your door. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how you use it. Make sure you hit the check mark, yada, yada, yada. So, but then that inputs it into our lock system and only allows that lock to be active during the time they book. So if they book from February 1st until February 10th, at checkout time at 11 a.m., that code deactivates.
Goes away.
7 days after they checked out, they just disappear off the system. So you don't have to keep cleaning.
So everything's automated.
Totally, 100%. So you want to do as little as possible. But the reason is ideally we'd like to get 30 of these units. And that's my girlfriend and my plan, because we see it as an opportunity to leverage our income and also use that money to accelerate our portfolio of purchasing more properties. But she kind of runs it more than I do, but she does put in a lot of time every day. So the SEO side of it is...
Do you have cleaners, or is she doing the cleaning?
No, we do have cleaners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me about the closet. There's a closet specifically for the cleaners with a deadbolt, and you got to have 3 sheets and for every bed. And
yeah.
So run me through just like what's the necessities, because I think a lot of people listening to this right now are actually like, oh, I always thought about doing this, but I've never done it. Mm-hmm. So other than having
in my market, they're thinking about, instead of renting out like a monthly basement suite, they're just like, hey, one of us is working from home now. We're just going to turn over the laundry ourselves and rent it out. And as long as you have 50% occupancy, you're making what you would make in a regular rental. Mm-hmm. So if you go to like 60, 70, 80% occupancy, you're just making way more money.
And the cool thing about it is, like, if your mom or family member wants to come, you just block off that time while they're gone or while they're there, and then you don't rent it out to anyone. So we have a supply closet. We call it our maid's closet. In every property, where we put a deadbolt on it with a keypad. No keys. You don't want any keys in any of these properties.
You can lose keys,
You can lose keys. People forget where they are or whatever, right? But so it has a deadbolt with a punch code, and inside of it you want 3 sets of sheets per bed. We try to have all of our beds be queens. Well, we don't try to. We have all of our beds as queens, and I know that a king-size bed is a nice feature for people that are coming and going, but the reason we do queens is we don't want the confusion of like, well, which one is a king sheet, and like, is there enough king sheets? Like, and this bed's a single bed. It's just too confusing, because the cleaners don't have time to do the laundry when they're on site. If the guests are nice enough to, we do in our automated message, hey, if you don't mind throwing all the sheets and the towels in the wash and starting it, that's huge. We'd love that. They hardly ever do it. If they do, great. Then the cleaners will just
No, I actually asked him and he said not to.
Yeah. So
I'm like, do you want me to strip all these beds? He's like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and then but so yeah, in the supply closet you want to have 3 sets of sheets for every bed, 3 towels per person. I think actually it might be 2 towels per person. I can't remember, but dude, it's a ton of towels. And then all of your stuff like your cases of wine. We give snacks to people, bubbly. We have our dishwasher tabs, our laundry tabs.
They had coffee, thank goodness.
What I'm hearing from you saying all this is like essentially to wrap that all up, you treat it like a business.
Yeah, it is a business.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and then we use the garages as another storage spot. So like the one house that Steve stayed in, as realtors, we get shit all the time. So like I had 2 clients move out of country and was like, hey, I have all this furniture. What am I supposed to do with it? And I was like, do you want me to sell it? They're like, if you can just get rid of it, we're happy. So I got like 4 beds and like all these couches and stuff. So like I stored all of that garage. But we don't ever let the guests use the garage because that's like another spot to store like garbage bags and whatever, right? Yeah, all the stuff.
Crazy. Can you do Airbnb in Vancouver or outside markets?
Most of the strata, people try and do them in stratas, and most of the stratas outlaw them.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But a lot of people just bypass it and then take the fine.
You're supposed to have a business license. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, I think in a lot of our cities, specifically Vancouver, if you're going to have a basement suite, you have to have a business license for the basement suite.
Yeah.
Well, you'll roll your eyes at this, but the rules in Toronto are you can only do it if 1, it is your principal residence, meaning that on your driver's license. And even if that is the case, 2, you can only do it a maximum of 180 days a year.
So 6 months.
Yep. 3, you pay an extra tax to the city because, of course, you do.
Yeah.
And then you need a license. So
But who's enforcing that?
Well, I mean, the city. I don't know. It's a good question. I would assume the city.
Someone needs to notify them.
But I'm telling. But it's working because when they announced that new rule, it was 2019, and we saw a flood of properties come onto the market for 1-year rental. Right. And our rental market slowed down even before the pandemic.
Wow.
And then we're like seeing it. It was like taking a long time. And that was directly because of the Airbnb announcement.
I'd be interested to roll the dice and rent a few of these proproperties, throw them on, see how it goes.
I'm sure people
take a 6-month lease.
It's so Albertan.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going against it.
What rules?
Yeah. It's like the Texas of Canada, I tell you.
So what do you think what do you think 2023 looks like for the Calgary Airdrie market? Are you expecting things to stay the same? Are they gonna have to cool off at some point? Is the oil boom back and sticking around for a while, or what's going on?
I think we're gonna be busy.
Yeah.
My team specifically has seen a lot of activity. My pipe for like February, March, April is already jammed. But this may be selfish. This is selfish. I don't care as much about the market as a whole as I do about my 5 people directly.
Yeah.
And houses are going to sell in good times and bad times.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I want to grow our business next year, and I know what we need to do that. And this year I learned a huge lesson in 2021 because I pulled my focus even though we had a huge year and it was very successful, and like now I have a team and have some staff members and things like that. I totally pulled my focus. I flipped 4 houses. I started Airbnbs. I did all this stuff that any person in business would tell you not to do. And truthfully speaking, it hurt my bottom line big time. I could have been way further ahead with my sales
if you just focused on
100%.
Yeah.
But what I got, like, it was a lifelong goal of mine to flip houses. So that the fact that I did that and made over $100,000 doing that made me feel good. The experience I got from that made me feel good. It also introduced me to my now girlfriend, which would have never happened. So that was super cool. I learned all these things, but now that I've taken a step back and looked at it, I'm like, that slowed me down and that hurt me bottom line wise. But now I've done it. I got it out of my system. And in 2023, there's nothing pulling me away. Yeah. I'm only focusing on the task at hand, which is our goal as a team is to get up to 240 ends. Mm-hmm. So if we do that in the next year,
I'm joining your team.
Great.
Yeah, I'm coming to Calgary.
Come on by.
So, you know what? The one thing I would say there, like it's good to have those goals and all that stuff. And we've done crazy amounts for our market. I mean, in Alberta, it's strange because they do like
you guys
4,000 deals,
way more than I don't know what it is. It's
and our
weird.
Average commission's $1,000.
Yeah. But like we've been there, and I found it. I was so happy I got. I think our best year was like 125 ends, and I was so happy I got there.
Yeah.
And then I also realized that I didn't find happiness there.
For sure.
So you have to like. I think it's great that you took time out to do something else that you actually felt passionate about. and that you didn't spend all of your time just trying to do more transactions. Because even though that's where the money is, it's not where the happiness is.
I found that too. Like when I hit 200 grand, I thought, oh man, this is it. I've made it. And then I hit 400 and then 500 and it's all the same cheeseburger to me. It's like, it's cool. But
once your mortgage is paid and your kids fed, man,
what else do you need?
Nothing else matters.
But the cool thing is, like, I got a girl on my team who was a piano teacher. Last year, she netted $9,000 teaching piano. She had 27 students. She was a client of mine and I recruited her to be an agent. She referred me to her parents and she was coming on the showings with her mom and dad and I was listening to how she talked and I was like, oh my gosh, she's an agent. She doesn't even know it. And so I asked her after one of these showings, like, hey, have you ever thought about being a realtor? And she's like, are you serious? Like, I could never be a realtor. I'm like, yeah, you could. You literally just were. Like, you did it. So anyways, I put her through the schooling. She's done 19 deals in 6 months and made
so cool
$53,000. And that's at her split. Yeah. So now I have this team of people who are fired up about what they're doing and they want to change their lives and they want to help more people. And then another girl that just joined our team, I was telling Tom this the other day, she called me and she was losing it, like in a good way. She's like, Derek, like I did what you said and I just started calling she was in new home sales for 10 years. I just started calling all my past clients. And this one girl was like, oh my God, Jamie, it's so nice to hear from you. Like, I want to sell my house and my rental and buy another one. She's like, they want to do 3 deals and all I had to do is call them. She's like, do you really mean that's all you have to do? I'm like, that's all you have to do, but you have to put them into your CRM, follow up with them and just keep making those calls. So now my focus is shifting onto how many people can I help change the lives of other people?
Here's my, I think, final question to wrap this all up in a nice bow is you just gave the example of someone that had gone through running their own business with 27 people and only netting $10,000, which you can't survive in any part of Canada on that, right? You have to have other help. And other members of your team that are finding the success that they never thought was possible. And I'm sure if 4 years ago, Derek was talking to today, Derek, he'd be like, no, that's impossible. I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, was there one shift in your life that you just decided, this is it? I'm not letting things pass. I'm going to make this happen. Like, was there a moment?
Yeah, it's funny because you and I were talking about that the other day. When I got into this business, it was out of necessity and fear. I was so broke, man. When I quit my job doing construction, my visa was maxed at 20 grand. My line of credit was maxed at 20 grand. And I had $15,000 in the bank. And that was supposed to be for taxes. And I was like, I'm going to give real estate a go. And it didn't take long for that $15,000 to get spent. And then my mom lent me $15,000 off of her line of credit. So I'm lying in bed thinking to myself, okay, now I've burned my life to the ground and I'm taking my mom down with me. And so, like, this has to happen. I don't have any other choice here. Like, I've literally, like it says in Think and Grow Rich, I've burned the boats. There's no turning back. I have to make this work. And so I just kept focused and kept going and doing what I needed to do. And then all of a sudden it started working and then it started growing. And then I got to a position where, like, Steve laughed at me one time. And I'll never forget this conversation because it was so impactful for me because I was like, Steve, I've got like 30 or maybe $40,000 in the bank, but I owe $25,000 on my line of credit. He's like, you're an idiot. Pay off your line of credit. And I was like, but I want the security of having that money in the bank. He's like, how much are you paying on the line of credit? Anyways, he ran it down for me. He's like, just pay it off. So, but I paid it off and I remember having this feeling like I'm free. Like I have this freedom. And now it's like, it was really that easy for me. I just want to show other people how to do that, but it didn't need to be complicated. So was there a moment where it all came together? I don't know, but all I know is that my life now compared to where it was is so much different. And now I have an opportunity to teach that to the next generation. And that's what I want. Like, your kids are so lucky to have you guys as parents because they don't have to suffer the way that we did. Like, you know, and not that you guys suffered, but like if they follow your footsteps, they can get there a lot faster. They should get there a lot faster because they don't have to go through the trial and error that you went through. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm tough on that, man. I want my kids to go through some shit because they got it, man.
Sure, but if they paid attention to what you taught them,
hopefully you can set the example.
They'll dodge the shit.
Hopefully.
Or another thing that I've learned is that when the shit's hitting the fan, all you got to do is reach around and turn it off and it stops blowing in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
I want to teach my kids one thing, which is because that's like so much of my career has been based off of like learning from others. Like I remember multiple other jobs I had before I got in real estate where I looked at that particular manager I had at a certain job or whatever, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be you. Right? Like, I will not be the 47-year-old dude that's like fighting for area manager in this company that nobody's ever heard of. I'm like, no, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something. So what did I do? At that time, I was lucky to have a friend that was in real estate, my best friend. And he was like, dude, there's no limit to how awesome you can be in this business. And I was like, fair. He's like, yeah, stop getting money from other people and just start making your own money. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then did the whole switch and everything worked out.
Yeah, I noticed as well as you were answering questions, you could see when you were talking about things that you were like excited about and passionate
I know, right?
about. Because you like get into this, you're talking about faster and it's like, it's
everybody
so cool,
on this
man.
podcast is like these two boring guys and they always interview somebody and they're pretty fun, but like now you brought the energy.
Yeah, you brought the energy hard.
Fantastic.
So thank you for joining us, Steve. Final thoughts?
No, man, this is awesome. We might put this out as a bonus episode. We don't know because we didn't know we were going to be here today.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
we'll
Gift with purchase.
Also, 2 new Toronto Maple Leafs fans,
Yeah.
Steve and Derek.
Yeah.
They went to the game last night.
Dude, that
had a
first
great
period
time.
was killer.
They played against Vancouver and beat Vancouver.
That
3-2.
first, I've seen a lot of Vancouver goals.
Yeah.
Lately.
In the first period.
Yeah.
And
in
then
the first period.
in the first periods of games.
I'm just half lucky that the Uber got here so late. I couldn't put on my jersey last night.
It would have been more embarrassing for you to be wearing it.
It would have been more painful.
Yeah. Derek, you got any final thoughts?
I just want to thank you guys for having me on here and being such good friends and inspiring me over the last few years and congratulate you on all your success. It's been really cool to watch what you guys have been doing. And the thing I like the most about it is that you're doing stuff that's not only helping other people, but actually bringing value back to your business. I think if you're going to spend time on anything, it needs to have a return, and you guys are living proof that you can put it's either time or money, and you can put time into something and bring a return back, and your YouTube channels have been incredibly impressive. So congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, the final thing I'll wrap it up with, and I've said this to both of you recently, is like anyone in which you are being mentored by or learning from, or just someone you watch on the internet, if it's Gary Vee or whatever, whoever you're into, right? It's like, yes, listen to what they say, but watch what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's
time.
really, I've shifted my mindset. Like I am now the people that I look up to and respect. I'm watching the moves they're making, not just what they're saying.
Yeah.
And not saying that people are doing different that they're saying, but it's just like you see it happening. And now I'm making my decisions on my business and my life based on the people I look up to.
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing? What do they do at this certain point? What are they, just wanted to add that in there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, thank you for listening or watching to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. This will be fun, and we will see you next week. Bye.